Colonel, when it comes to the concept of the military industrial complex of the United States somehow benefiting from what's going on in Ukraine, do you feel that after all, with these weapons being used in Ukraine and somehow experience some sort of new reality against Russia, is that going to benefit them in a long run?
Well, they think it is. Let's go back to the very beginning when I was with Chairman Powell in the Pentagon, 93 and 94, in the first part of the Clinton administration, and I agree vehemently with John Mearsheimer, who said the other day, essentially said that it all started with George W. Bush. It started with William Jefferson Clinton. At least John gave credit to the fact that Clinton started the expansion of NATO. He certainly did. But he forgot all about 78 days of bombing Serbia. He forgot all about taking Milosevic and marching him to the criminal court, when we love the criminal court to death. Radovan Karadzic before him. These were all titular Russian allies. He forgot all about how at Pristina, Wes Clark was telling the British general on the ground there as Yeltsin was flying troops into Pristina, challenged them. And the British general said, I'm not about to start World War III. Well, that's where we are today. We've been doing this since Bill Clinton. We started this process with Bill Clinton and every president since, with a little bit of slack with Obama, but nonetheless pursuing it to the hilt. We've been sticking our finger in Russia's eyes, both of them at the same time, with this damn expansion. And now it's coming to a head, and Putin has done something about it. And Trump hasn't a clue, Nima. He hasn't a clue. He's lying through his teeth if he does, but I don't think he has a clue. And I think that's even more dangerous than if he's lying.
Larry, the same questions goes to you. The military industrial complex long-term benefit, is that going to come out of Ukraine?
So let's talk about what you mean by benefit. Are they getting more money from the federal government? Yes. Are they able to give their shareholders a nice return? Yes. That appears to be the direction. But what both the war in Ukraine and the war in Israel against the Palestinians, and then with Iran, what it has exposed is how crappy these weapon systems are. I mean, what works? We've already seen that Patriot missiles, they've run out of Patriot missiles. They've run out of THAADs. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal today noting the United States has a total of 7 THAAD batteries, terminal high altitude area defense. 7 of them. 2 of them are in Israel. And they ran out of missiles. And what the article forgot to mention was each of those missiles cost $13 million. Let's take the Patriots. Here's Trump talking about, I'm going to send 17 Patriots. Okay, you send a Patriot missile battery. You're sending, each battery has 4 launchers. Each launcher can carry up to 16 missiles, PAC-3 missiles. And so let's just do the math. Let's just say you send 10, because I can do the math on that a lot easier. So if you got 4 tubes, 16 each, 64. We're going back to 3rd grade here. If you got 10 of those, that's 640. That means each of those batteries has 1 set of missiles that they can launch, and once they launch, they're done. 640 missiles. Lockheed Martin only makes 550 of those a year. Oh, now how many of those do you fire at an inbound uranium? Minimum of 2, usually 4 is better.
Okay. And let me just make one point. And when you shoot those missiles, get out, because you're dead.
Yeah. So the geraniums that are coming in cost between $20,000 and $50,000. I've seen 2 different figures for them. Each one of those PAC-3 missiles costs $7 million. So you're basically going to fire $28 million at a $50,000 drone. Yeah, how long can you keep that up? So the problem with our military industrial complex is they make really expensive crap, and it doesn't work that well in combat. You don't see people lining up to buy Patriot missiles. They're looking at the S-400 going, yeah, I want one of those. Those are far more inexpensive and far more effective than anything the United States or Israel has. So that's I say it's a mixed bag. They're making money, and they're going to get more money. That's no doubt about that. But it doesn't change the strategic picture for the United States, and it leaves us with a lot of exposed a lot of tactical deficits.
And Nima, if you want to look at the dollars it's going to make them, look at this $1 trillion plus in the defense budget.
Yeah.
With Congress adding another 150 billion and putting it over $1 trillion. And look at what Brown University's cost of war project, for example, which is a very good analysis, says is going to happen to 65% of that money. It's going to go directly into contractors' pockets. I have no doubt that's accurate. So yeah, they're going to make money. Whether they produce crap or not, they're going to make money off the American taxpayer.
Is that, Colonel, is that a decision of choice to have these expensive weapons? Because we had an interview, I don't know if you saw the interview that Iranian CEO of a drone production had on Al-Mayadeen, if I'm not mistaken, the name of this. He said that when they tried to reverse engineering of the American drone, they found it somehow so expensive, and they have decided to use the same technology but make a cheaper one. And the maximum value he gave us, it was $50,000 for one drone. But when you compare the drones that Iran is producing or Russia is producing and to the drones produced in the West, it's unbelievable. The gap is somehow unimaginable. Is that a decision of choice?
My son he's gone into operations now. He's no longer flying, but he was a Reaper guy and one of the more expensive drones. And if you look at the technology that went into that, and you look at how the people who worked that program use that technology to stick the Pentagon, which they do increasingly now, on things like right to repair. For example, is about 60% of this stuff, F-35, I think, is even higher percentage than that in critical components, can't even be worked on by the military, where the money is sunk. That E7, E6, E5 who goes out there to work on that F-35, you're paying him a salary. That's it. Lockheed Martin has proprietary maintenance rights over that system, so they have to do the maintenance. If you want that bird to fly again, you got to have that Lockheed Martin contractor team in there to work on it. This is why they are so expensive, in part because they make them that way on purpose. Then they can do this sort of thing and defy the military to figure out how to work on it. They're trying to do something about that right now. I'll give it to Hegseth. He's trying to do something about proprietary maintenance. He's going to find it very difficult because it's worked into the system, and that's what your Iranian has discovered.
Larry, here in Brazil, when you ask a car mechanic, what car would be easier for them or what car they would prefer to have in their office, they're going to talk about the Japanese car. And none of them would mention a German car, BMW, Mercedes, and all these fancy cars, because they say they are somehow over-engineered. The motor of the complexity of the vehicle is somehow confusing for them. Is that the case for the drones of the United States, or somehow different?
Well, remember that first that drone that Iran got from the United States came courtesy of the CIA, and it's still not clear how Iran brought it down. but the CIA was not known for its cost consciousness. They didn't pass out awards for people who saved them money. I saw it on so many different fronts. We're witnessing the United States has become Nazi Germany in terms of its military industrial output. And what I mean by that is during the reign of Hitler, the Germans got really good at, man, they produced some incredible, massive tanks. But the problem was it took a long while to build them, and they weren't able to build a lot of them. I mean, they were very powerful. And the same with, they pioneered with jet aircraft. Meanwhile, back in Detroit, they were cranking out Sherman tanks, several a day. The same with aircraft. The same with ships. We recognized back then that we could actually build. This equipment's going to go into war. It's going to get blown up, and you're going to need to replace it. Now we've created a system that it's a Rolls Royce, a Bentley. Pick your luxury automobile that requires a lot of very expensive parts. It requires specialized maintenance, as Colonel Wilkerson was pointing out, and it doesn't necessarily fit into an integrated strategic picture. So what is it that we're trying to do with these weapon systems? How are they supposed to work together? And the MQ-9 Reaper, as is an example, that costs between $30 and $40 million a piece.
Yep.
and the Houthis were shooting them down,
quite regularly.
7 in 7 weeks. So that's almost $250 million right there. So there is the defense acquisition process in the United States is not guided by any kind of national defense strategy. We're really like, we're sitting there saying, who do we need to attack? And we haven't even planned for what we're going to need to carry that out. It's like right now we keep talking about, we're going to have to take on China. With what? We're going to send ships out that are going to have to stay offshore far enough so they're out of the reach of hypersonic missiles, which we don't have any of. I mean, this is what's remarkable. Some of the most effective technology we don't have. And I know that we were working on it, but we technologically failed to develop these systems.
And Nima, I got to throw this out there. I know Larry knows this, but the tank that really ate the Germans' lunch was the T-34.
Yeah.
And it was a cheap can, but it was fast and it could maneuver around those big, heavy German tanks, and it'd get 8 rounds off for every one they got off. And at the Battle of Kursk, the Germans learned. They were roundly defeated by that little tank.
Yeah.
Colonel, do you see the capacity in the military industrial complex to shift somehow their focus on something, I don't know, something that is not related to the endless wars? Because to produce more arms, you need to have endless wars. But how can they somehow deviate from this mindset, this sort of concept to have endless wars to provide the weapons to the countries who are involved in that?
Well, you're assuming that the CEOs of Lockheed Martin, RTX, Grumman, and the other giants that are all colluding now and monopolies, that's very frankly what they are. You're assuming that they're interested in the national security of the United States. They're not, I assure you. What they're interested in is a shareholder bottom line and their CEOs and VPs bottom line. That's what they're interested in. So the more money that pours over the transom, the better off they are. They can go to their shareholders' meetings and they tell their shareholders, hey, man, business is great. Wars are all over the place, and we're not fighting in any of them. They're all proxy wars. We're just shoveling this stuff over the transom. And as long as the taxpayers' money comes in, we'll just shovel it. We don't really care about its quality. We care about the price, and we don't even really care about the quantity as long as the price is really high for a single item. That's their look. That's their vision. They are corporate capitalists, predatory capitalists par excellence. They don't give a crap about the security of the country. Oh, yeah, they advertise in all the military magazines and everything else that they are the reason that the American military is better than any other in the world. But as Larry has said, they aren't.
Yeah.
They haven't been for some time. And we're smoking some cheap stuff. We're living a pipe dream with regard to the might of the American military. And one of the reasons is that the defense industrial base in this country is utterly broken. It's motivated by nothing but profit, not by the national security interests of the United States.
Yeah, and let's just toss in too the other the other dimension of this is that to build some of these weapons, or to build drones, what do they need? Oh, they need these electric motors. Where do they get those? Oh, China. Well, we're busy pissing off China, and also the explosive, antimony, one of the rare earth minerals, antimony goes into making explosives for like artillery shells. Chinese are holding back on that too.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden now we got supply chain problems because on the one hand we want to go to war with China, but we still need a lot of stuff that China makes and that we can't make without them. I mean, it's insane.
Yep.
Absolutely insane.
Your point about the cars, Nima, was made in a book called The Machine That Changed the World. It was a book about automobiles and the automobile industry. And what they found was that Japanese production lines were far superior to German, to American, or any others. And they thought, well, it's because of the Japanese. So then they went and looked at a Mazda line in Matamoros, Mexico, where the workers were Mexican. Now, some of the managers were Japanese. That's the way the Japanese did things in the beginning. They checked those cars. They came out with fewer defects at the end of the production line than any other car being made on the face of the earth at the time. Take Mercedes, for example. It would come out with 100+ defects, and craftsmen would then have to go in by hand and repair those defects before that car went on the market. Toyota, for example, came out with 1.8, I think, and the T100 pickup truck came out with the lowest ever in the history of analyzing the automobile industry. So, yeah, there are people in the world who make really good products, and Brazilians buy them, I'm sure.
Remember, with cars, if it's good enough for ISIS, it's good enough for me.
When the Japanese gave us 5,000 Jeeps for Iraq in the first Iraq war, we thought that was a pretty good deal. They were good Jeeps.
Yeah. Larry, do you feel that the reality of what you and Colonel are talking about, the military industrial complex and how expensive the weapons are, and in terms of the quantity and quality of the weapons, is that recognized by the new administration, by Pete Hegseth and his people? Hey,
didn't you hear Trump? We got the best military in the world. Nobody's better than us. We got more missiles than everybody. We got more, the guy's delusional. I mean, it's really, I'm sad to admit that I voted for him. But I think he's got as many mental disorders going on as Joe Biden had, just a different category, because what he says is so ridiculous. And he's a salesman, but he's a used car salesman. And I have been doing sort of an informal survey. I mean, with you're born in Iran, worked in Germany, live in Brazil. I've talked to a guy named Marcelo. He's Brazilian, lives in Italy. I talked to Giotishman, who is Indian and living in China, checking around the world. Used car salesmen have the same reputation around the world. Okay? I think I've scientifically established that as a fact.
Pre-owned.
Yeah.
Pre-owned.
Yeah, pre-owned. So, yeah.
An American euphemism.
You pass in front of their office, they're gonna grab you.
Oh yeah. Tell you what you want to hear. The lying is an art form. And
I'm told, Nima, that the CEO of Ford Motor Company right now is driving a Chinese car because he wants to demonstrate to all and sundry that they make a good car.
Yeah. Colonel, we had the third round of negotiations between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul. What are we getting out of these talks, out of these negotiations? Is that any is anything substantial coming out of these negotiations in order to somehow to bring some sort of settlement to what's going on in Ukraine, or it's all about the battlefield, the exchange of prisoners, the bodies of soldiers? What goes beyond that, in your opinion?
I think what you said there at the end is what's happening there. It's just battlefield details that can be worked out on both sides, like exchange of prisoners. I don't think anything substantive is happening. As I said, I think it's all coming to a crescendo, both politically and militarily, for Ukraine. I think we're going to see Zelensky gone within this period of time I named as being conducive to military operations. I think we're going to have a new leader in Ukraine, and I think he is not going to necessarily sue for peace. And maybe the Europeans and us might be an impediment to that, but he is going to be different, and he's going to look for a way to get this thing stopped. That's my hope anyway. And I think the only impediment to that is going to be us and the Europeans.
To bring some sort of difference to what's going on in Ukraine, you have to have somebody that is willing to do that.
Yep.
Do you see any of these people? I would say the first option would be Zaluzhny Larry or Poroshenko, these people. Colonel.
Which Larry?
Both of you. But I was talking with Larry Johnson, Colonel. When you see Ukraine, when you see the options on the table, we know that the British intelligence was somehow preparing Zaluzhny for the position of for being the president of Ukraine. But how is that going to play out for Ukraine in a long run? Are they gonna have some sort of change?
Well, we have sort of a history with this. If you go back and look at Vietnam, whenever you start plugging into boy, if we just change the guy at the top, that'll fix our problem. No, it won't. I mean, this is not a leadership problem in Ukraine. This is a problem with NATO's intent to use Ukraine as a pawn or a proxy to attack Russia. And so you've got to go to the very heart of that. That's why Russia talks about the root causes. The root cause of this was the eastward expansion of NATO starting in 1997. And as Colonel Wilkerson noted, it was the one that really kicked it off first was Bill Clinton. And they announced the expansion of NATO. It was in March 1999. And then 2 weeks later, started attacking in Serbia. And, it's been, we've been telling, the Russians ever since then to go, basically go screw themselves. And we've paid no attention to Russia's desire to actually integrate with us, to have a cooperative partnership with the West. So this, changes in leadership is just that's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's still going to sink, and I don't see, there is no diplomatic solution to this. I mean, in practical terms, because what Russia is going to insist on, they don't have flexibility to negotiate and make concessions anymore. They're not going to say, "Oh, okay, we'll allow NATO to stay in Ukraine." No, they're the treaty that the draft treaty that Putin presented to Biden in December of 2021 stipulated that NATO had to get the hell out of Ukraine. No more NATO, de facto NATO bases. Right now, Yavoriv, that base in Western Ukraine, it's been a de facto NATO sub-headquarters since 1997. And Russia's also going to insist no more military exercises with Ukraine. None of that. They want to back off NATO. And actually, I think they'll probably be able to succeed. It may come at the expense of a war, though, because these Lilliputian countries of Germany, France, and the UK, they're talking tough, but the best expression I've heard is like two bald guys fighting over a comb. Okay, they get the comb, then what are they going to do? They don't have the military. They don't have the military production base. They don't have the manpower base. They don't have a technological edge at all. And they want to take on Russia. All they're going to do is just get their ass kicked.
Even the best thing that could happen, and I'm not even for a moment suggesting it's going to happen, is that Ukraine somehow found some leadership that would tell NATO and the United States to go to hell.
Yeah.
And make a deal on its own. And declare neutrality, absolute fundamental neutrality. But look at what we're doing all along this arc of crisis that we're creating. We're in the Arctic making a mess right now for both China and Russia. We are, as I said, in the Baltic making a mess. We're in Georgia making a mess. We're in Azerbaijan making a mess. We are trying everywhere we can along that arc to cultivate people who will stand up to Russia, so to speak, and give Russia problems. We're not going to give up. Ukraine could, as I just said, it could settle its own accounts and tell us to go to hell. But we've got other irons in the fire, and we will just stoke those because we're not going to give up on this. We are intent. Lindsey Graham is the person to watch on this. Even though he and Blumenthal made absolute fools of themselves with regard to both Gaza and Ukraine, they're the people to watch because they're the adamantine nature of this global hegemony attempt by the empire to restore itself, so to speak. They're indicative of that, and we're not giving up. We will use something else to batter Russia with, and they know that. They know that. So the danger is shifting rapidly to the other side for the reason that the empire is making them think this way, making them have to deal with the prospect of in the future, we're going to just keep this up.
Colonel, which one is much crucial for the United States besides what's going on in Ukraine? Is that going to be the situation with Azerbaijan or Arctic that you mentioned?
Well, I think the most crucial part of that arc right now, from the Arctic all the way down to the southern end of the Persian Gulf, is Iran. That's the most crucial part right now because it's got this instability of this mercurial homicidal maniac named Bibi Netanyahu in the middle of it. You've also got, I think, the Iranians, whatever we said the other day, remember, I think the Iranians are waking up. And they are prepared to go back to war with Israel and to do as much as possible to destroy it. Even though Donald Trump might be sitting there, egging on the conflict and maybe even eventually entering it, I don't think he's going to enter it in a significant way that would change the outcome. So we're going to look at the disappearance of the Jewish state, anyway, of Israel. If not in terms of state propriety and acceptance in the world, it's going to lose itself to the rockets and the bombs that are going to fall on it. Yeah. So there's the more dangerous part of the theater, I think, right now, of that arc we're trying to create. All designed to stop the northern, the central, and the southern base road initiatives of China, amongst other things, and to take Russia with it.
Larry, yesterday I had a talk with Ted Postal, Professor Ted Postal. He mentioned that even after the attack on Iran, the attacks on Iran on the part of Israel and the United States, Iran has the upper hand. Iran has the possibility and the capability of producing nuclear weapons if they decide to do that.
Right.
Your take on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's been the case for 20 years. Iran's got the scientific and engineering capability to do so, but they chose not to do so because of the religious dictate of the Ayatollah Khamenei. And, you know, I think it's to whether or not they're going to change that change that position is now up in the air, because you had Ali Larijani go to Moscow this week to meet with Putin, and you know he's sort of he's like the I guess Iran's version of Steve Witkoff. You know, you know, he's the Ayatollah's Steve Witkoff. He's got, you know, they have a close relationship. It's been
Good comparison.
Yeah. I mean,
Iranian real estate man.
But
he's not that much realist, but he's a political giant. You know?
Yeah.
We haven't got a readout directly of what they talked about, but we also saw that the defense minister of Iran was meeting with Belousov in Russia, the defense minister there, and that there was a joint meeting between Iran, China, and Russia. So clearly, you know, they're not sitting back waiting to see what the United States is going to do. And I think Iran now is in a more proactive position. Whether it chooses to go ahead and create the nuke or not, it's certainly not sitting back waiting to be attacked. Now, while that's going on, you do have Iran. They've been meeting. I think they had their second round of meetings with 3 European countries, I believe France, Germany, and the UK. Yeah. So they're, you know, Iran's moving on a variety of both diplomatic and military fronts. And, you know, the United States is sitting back thinking all it has to do is threaten Iran, and Iran's going to, you know, get down on its knees and beg not to be get beaten again. And that's just not realistic. So I agree with Larry that you know, Iran is sort of I think the priority target for both Washington and Tel Aviv, but it's one that neither has the capability of actually taking out.
Nima, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that Iran is now decided to do to us what we did to them. And they're going to do it with a nuclear explosion. It's going to be deep underground, just like the North Koreans did. And we're going to have trouble detecting it. And we're going to have trouble determining if it is a nuclear test or just a seismic event. But that's what it's going to be. And then they'll make an announcement or not. They will have fooled us the way we fooled them.